You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch Radio.
Hello everybody, and a very warm Wednesday welcome to you all to this episode of Haunted Histories with me, Penny G. Morgan. I do hope everyone's well and the warm weather, well, you're enjoying it, because let's be honest, it could be gone with a click of the fingers. Yeah, that was my very own sound effect I did there. You know, I can do it again, look. I have the power. So, who listened to my show last week with the wonderful Ashley Mortimer on Boleskine House? Did you enjoy it? Did you learn anything? What did you think? Do tell me, and I just want to say that some of the jokes I was making, yeah, I don't assume everyone doesn't know, and I can confirm that I did speak with Gary, and it was all done in very, very sort of a light-hearted way, teasing him about the fact he was, well, basically telling people stuff that I was about to tell them. So I'm going to employ Gary Bradfield of EAPI as my researcher, I think, because, yeah, it'd save me a job, wouldn't it? Then again, that's the bit I enjoy, so maybe not. I'll just, yeah, get him on the show every so often when I don't know the answers to things. But if you didn't get a chance to listen to it, don't forget, we have our new YouTube channel that you can go and subscribe to. You can go and access, there'll be special content going up on there. We're all working on it at the moment. And yeah, and you can listen to all the Parasearch shows. So be it mine, be it one of Kerry's, be it Paul's, be it Kaz's, whatever, you can have a listen to it. So you go for that. Hi, Kerry. Right, what else have we got to talk about? Well, I just mentioned Kaz. Our website. Have you checked out our new website? It's very good. We're all doing blogs on it for you, on a variety of subjects. Mine, obviously, predominantly history, which, you know, you'd probably expect. He's already part of Parasearch. Oh, Gary, you didn't realise. Okay, yeah. And then he puts a comment where we've just been talking about you, Gary. Did you hear? Or is it going to be a surprise if you listen back for the first few minutes? Now, if you didn't hear what we said about you, that's your punishment for being late. There you go. I'm a bossy teacher when I'm doing my show. Anyone's late's got to bring me an apple to say sorry. Or a bottle of wine. I don't mind. Either or. Anyway, our Rooney, she's done a new blog for you all to read about trust in the paranormal. Oh, you missed it, Gary. Well, you won't know what we said about you, will you? Kerry, you and I can sort of wink at each other surreptitiously about what I was just saying and see what Gary's letting himself in for. Anyway, what was I saying? Yes, Kaz, just done a new blog for you. Go and have a look at it. We've all got blogs on there that we've written about various subjects, like I say, and they're all darned good, if I say so myself. And then we also feature our... Sorry, Gary's just put he was talking to his wife. Okay. But we do feature external blogs such as Ashley Nibbs, such as Sarah Chimacero, and the odd other one that we think is worth. It was all good, wasn't it, Kerry? We've been quite nice about him. Even though I'm in a foul mood today because I haven't had much sleep just recently, and not for fun reasons either. So, yeah, but I was being nice about someone. Shocked. I'm shocked I am. What else have we got going on for you at the moment? We've got another competition. It's going to be drawn on the 4th of July. And it's with the lovely Bear Medicine Walker. And it's to have a medium reading with her. All you've got to do, and we were being lovely, yes. All you've got to do is head on over to the Parasearch page. You know the score. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. But just remember, 3 things to do. Enter the competition. Go on our website. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. So, tonight, what are we doing tonight? Well, this was a referral from our gorgeous friends, the gorgeous girls and boy, at 3 Girls in the Dark, and they said to me, I was chatting to Gina, and she said, "Oh, do you know the guys from Apex Paranormal?" I said, "I know of them, I don't know them." And she went, "You've got to get them on to do a show on this place." She said it's one of the most active places she has ever been in her career as a paranormal investigator. And of course that was a bit sort of enticing, as you can imagine, to go talk to someone about a place that a very experienced paranormal investigator just has the words "wow" when she describes it. And I was lucky enough to get in touch with Elijah Buchholz. That's how it's pronounced, Kerry. Buchholz. That's why I tried to put the description in the brackets for you, because I had to ask him how to pronounce it. And we've done an interview for you on the Beattie Mansion. And the Beattie Mansion, and we'll talk all about it in about 10-15 minutes, but that's actually in Click Like Share. Oh, good. He's getting trained well, Kerry. I'm impressed. But anyway, where was I? Yes, so Beattie Mansion. It's in a place called St. Joseph in Missouri. And it's on one side of Missouri. It's on the Kansas sort of borders of Missouri. And then St. Louis is on the other side by the Mississippi. So it's the same state as the 3 Girls in the Dark, but it's on the other side. And don't worry, Kerry. That's why I ask people when they have a strange surname. I always ask them how to pronounce it. It's a bit like the conversation I was having with someone recently on Facebook about hyacinth bouquet. And when I was pronouncing it phonetically, she said, "Why don't you just write bouquet as in bunch of flowers?" And I was thinking, yeah, that would work, wouldn't it? But anyway. So, would it surprise you to know that Missouri, as a state, actually has a very interesting and quite violent past? And it was also the victim of separation of friends and family during the Civil War of 1861. And I'm not even talking about the violence that the Prohibition caused some sort of 70 years later, seeing as Budweiser is brewed in Missouri, in St. Louis, Anheuser-Busch. I'm actually talking about the Civil War of 1861. And as a north-south border state, there were many in Missouri who were Confederate supporters and who farmed and relied on slave labour to keep those farms running and profitable. But on the other side of the state, there were Unionists who wanted to abolish slavery and sided with the Northerners. Now, it was this fighting in part which potentially lit the flame of one of the most famous outlaws of that time. Now, I'm wondering if anyone's going to guess who it is I'm going to speak about before I speak about him. But yes, it was a man, and he was from Missouri, and his name was Jesse James. Now, when you read up on the events which permeated Jesse's existence, it does make you wonder if he was born a violent man, or if the various chapters and episodes which make up his relatively short life moulded him into such a character. At the incredibly young age of 3, yes, it is Jesse James, Gary, Jesse's birth father died when he was only 3 years old. And his father was a Baptist preacher and a farmer. And Robert had 7 slaves on his farm to help with the cultivation. Zerelda, Jesse's mother, and also the name of his wife, who was also his first cousin, married twice more. Her third husband, one Dr. Reuben Samuel, was probably the most fatherly figure young Jesse had had in his life. And so at the age of 15, to see his stepdad hung to the point of death, but not quite dead, then cut down and tortured, probably to within an inch of his life, to reveal the whereabouts of Jesse's brother Frank James, who had joined the Quantrill Raiders, a pro-Confederate group of guerrilla fighters, who were probably the best known of these bushwhackers, as they were called. Those who banded together to stand against Union soldiers, who were larger in number and better equipped with weapons and such, coming from the more industrial north. Now, I found it quite interesting that when I was doing my research about this, that based on a census, Missouri as a state had about 10% of residents as accounted for as slaves. But in Clay County, the sort of county where the Jameses were from, that number was actually as high as 25%. Now, that shows the divide just in one state, the state of Missouri, of which Clay County is a county of, who would be pro-Confederate and who would be very definite Unionists, all in just one place. Now, when the Quantrill Raiders came round to Clay County again, they actually had a new recruit who was just 16 years old at the time. And that was one Jesse James, who chose to stand shoulder to shoulder with his brother Frank to fight against the Unionist armies. The methods they used were quite dirty, to be truthful. It was guerrilla warfare as far as they were concerned. One of the accounts of their, well, I suppose you could call it reign of pro-Confederate terror, was when the Quantrill Raiders attacked a train carrying over 20 unarmed off-duty Union soldiers. It's known as the Centralia Massacre. They forced the soldiers off the train, and the non-soldiers, separated them, and made the soldiers strip off their uniforms and then shot them. But that wasn't enough. They then proceeded to mutilate the bodies further, and even scalp them, before sending the train back down the tracks whilst on fire. This wasn't the only time they did those sort of things. Scalping did seem to be a modus operandi when they captured soldiers. Even after the Civil War had finished in May 1865, there was still a lot of bitterness between the opposing sides, and it left the state of Missouri divided into pretty much three different sections. Anti-slavery Unionists, who identified with the Republican Party, segregationist conservative Unionists, who identified with the Democratic Party, and pro-slavery, ex-Confederate secessionists, many of whom were allied with the Democrats, especially in the southern part of the state. Now, it was then that Jesse started to achieve the notoriety and fame that we now know him for as a criminal or bank robber, or, as the propaganda he tried to perpetuate, as that of a Robin Hood-esque type character who was there to ease the weight pushed upon the poor Missourians by the cruel Republicans. If there was a paparazzi in the 1800s, I think Jesse James would have had him on speed dial. For the next 15 years, Jesse managed to continue his crime spree, robbing banks, stagecoaches and trains, and invading capture time and time again, thanks to the Confederate sympathisers who would hide him and his brother Frank, sheltering them from the various forces trying to apprehend them. Even the famous Pinkertons failed to bring the James brothers into custody. Their first attempt, where they sent an officer named Joseph Witcher, ended up with Witcher dead. Their second attempt, with two further officers, ended up with a firefight and another Pinkerton dead. This actually incensed the Pinks leader, a man by the name of Alan Pinkerton, who took it very personally and basically declared a vendetta against the Jameses and their gang. He coordinated and was present at a raid on the homestead of the family and had an incendiary device thrown into the farmhouse. The resulting explosion and fire killed Jesse's young half-brother Archie and maimed his mother Zerelda by blowing her arm off. Now, not unsurprisingly, this actually garnered sympathy from fellow Missourians. It did not completely eradicate the bounty on the Jameses' heads, but it made it less appealing to other people to be the ones to bring them in. Now, as with a lot of criminals and megalomaniacs and all that kind of thing, it was actually a mistake that caused their downfall. They chose to commit a robbery some 500 miles or so away from their normal turf. They went out of Missouri. And a catalogue of errors ensued in this particular bank job, and it left the James younger gang, as it was known, with no one but Frank and Jesse James on their own. Well, they disappeared to Tennessee and decided to go under assumed names. They were in Nashville, Tennessee, in fact. But after a short while, the Tennessean authorities started to grow just a tad suspicious, and Jesse moved his family back to Missouri and to St. Joseph. It was here that, with all of his gang gone, Jesse turned to Charlie and Bob Ford for shelter and protection. He trusted Charlie, having been on raids with him previously. Bob was new and was young and enthusiastic. But what Jesse didn't know was that Bob Ford was actually in league with Governor Crittenden, who had pledged to bring the James gang down. Now, it was on the 3rd of April, 1882. Jesse James had, for some reason, and I find this a strange thing to highlight, he'd got up on a chair because he'd noticed a picture above the hearth was dusty and he wanted to clean it. And it was with his back turned that Bob Ford took his opportunity to shoot James dead in the back of the skull. Jesse James was 34 and left a wife and 2 children, one of whom, somewhat ironically, would become a lawyer and be taken under the wing of Crittenden's son, the son of the man who orchestrated what could be perceived as the murder of his father. In fact, the Ford brothers, instead of immediately capturing their bounty, were charged with first-degree murder, and in the space of a day were charged, sentenced to be hung, and then granted a full pardon by Governor Crittenden, which would suggest to me anyway, that capturing Jesse James alive had never, ever been part of the plan. Well, how does this relate to the Beattie Mansion that we're talking about? Well, a lot of money came through St. Joe. It was the furthest eastern point of the original Wild West, which was basically anything west of the Mississippi. And it was also the end point of the Pony Express, and also the place of Jesse James's killing. And if you're ever in St. Joseph, you can go and see the Jesse James Museum, which is actually in the house that he was killed in. And they're very proud about the fact that you can see the gunshot wound, the bullet, where it landed in the wall. Okay, on that note, let's have a quick 30-second break, and then we'll start listening to the interview. Stay with me.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
Okay, and now you've had your history bit. I've talked to you a bit about Jesse James and his connection to St. Joseph in Missouri, but now we're joined by an actual person who lives in St. Joseph, Missouri. Now, Elijah, forgive me, you'll have to pronounce your surname for me.
Buchholz. So like a ghost says boo, and then the animal, the colt.
Okay. Buchholz. Brilliant. Thank you. Well, Elijah, I don't have to use his surname again now. Elijah is one of the members of the group Apex Paranormal. Now, Apex were recommended to us by our awesome friends at Three Girls in the Dark. And we sort of started talking about having the guys on to do a show. And it was then that Elijah told me that they're actually the key holders for a place in, I'll call it St. Joe, as it's sometimes known as St. Joe, Beattie Mansion. And I know that when I last spoke to Gina of Three Girls in the Dark, she said one of the most amazing experiences and nights of investigation she's ever had was at this mansion. And of course, you know, when I heard that, I thought, we've got to do a show on it. Sounds like a no-brainer. And Elijah's kind enough to be sitting in his car talking to us on his lunch break. So we do appreciate that, sir, that you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk to you.
Brilliant, brilliant. So with Apex, how did Apex come about?
Well, our group is a little unique in that we are all mental health professionals, and we all at one point in time worked together in the mental health field.
Right.
So each one of us individually had an interest in the paranormal and didn't really know it about each other. Not something we really talked about at work. And as our friendship grew and we got to spend more time together outside of work, we realized that we had this shared interest. So we started with, I wouldn't call it investigating, but there's a place out here called Belvoir Winery that's fairly well known around here in the U.S. We would go out there and, we would just kind of mess about. We'd go in the abandoned buildings and see if we could have any experiences or what would happen, and had a bunch of experiences. So from there we decided, let's try this. Let's do a public overnight investigation somewhere and, just have some fun and see what it's all about. Mm-hmm. So we booked a overnight public investigation at the Missouri State Penitentiary.
Mopen.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mopen. You know Mopen.
I haven't been there sadly, but I know of Mopen. Yes, that is also on my list to do a show on. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's an incredible place.
Yeah.
So we signed up for this public overnight tour or investigation at Mopen, and we went, and that's actually where we met 3GD. Gina and Emily were there doing that same investigation to check the place out. And we ended up hanging out with them most of the night, and we got along so well and had such a blast with each other that it's led to a long friendship. But after we left and we did that investigation, the 3 original members of Apex just, we kind of looked at each other and we're like, this is the greatest thing that we have ever done. We need to start all the time. This is amazing. I mean, we were just blown away by this thing called paranormal investigating or ghost hunting or whatever you want to label it. Yeah. And then with a little bit of prodding from 3GD, of course, we ended up putting ourselves out there as a group, and ever since then we investigate at least once a month. It seems lately we're doing more than that. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of how our story began.
Wow. Okay. Well, those 3GD girls, they do like to prod people into doing stuff, don't they?
They
really are enablers,
They are enablers.
I've discovered that. I really do hope to get to meet them sort of face to face one day and get to do an investigation with them if I can get across the pond at some point. But so Apex was formed. So when was Apex formed, Elijah?
Apex was an official group as of, I want to say 2014, 2015.
Right. Okay. And I know that you look after, you guys say Beattie, we say Beattie, same as with, it's Warren Beattie over here and Warren Beattie over there. We know we're talking about the same place. You became the key holders for that, so that's kind of your property that you look after, which it does seem to be a common thing for investigation groups to do. Even in this country, a lot of them do have a property that they're the key holder for, which I think is great.
Well, it was really weird how it happened. We had no intentions of it. Excuse me. The caretaker of Beattie Mansion contacted us, and they've been trying to renovate it into a bed and breakfast. Mm-hmm. It's a massive building. It's 18,000 square feet.
Wow.
It's 36 rooms, and when the owner bought it, that was kind of how he envisioned. He's retired, and he wanted to invest in this property and renovate it and turn it into a B&B and mm-hmm. kind of live out his retirement years doing that, running a B&B. And they've tried for years to renovate this thing, and they can't keep contractors there. Contractors keep getting scared off by different things that happen inside the building, and so the caretaker contacted us. They didn't want anybody to know about this. They were worried about, having a haunted reputation.
Sure.
And they called us up and said, you know what, guys, we got this stuff going on. We can't keep contractors here. Do you think you guys can come check it out and let us know what you think? So we happen to be in town. I actually live in Kansas City, which is about an hour south of St. Joe.
Mm-hmm.
So does the rest of our group.
Right.
So we happen to be in town for another investigation, and we said, we'll stop by and spend a couple hours and check the place out while we're in town.
Okay.
So we went up there, and within probably 5 minutes of walking in that building, we saw somebody walk down a hall and went down there, and there's nobody around. We know nobody was in the building, and heard a female yell out, "I want to go home." And so that was our first initiation to Beattie Mansion.
Wow.
We ended up spending probably 3 or 4 hours that first day, and just about anything you could hope to experience at a haunted location, we experienced within those few hours. So we scheduled to go back and did an official overnight, and same thing, we were just blown away by the amount of activity that we experienced. So we decided, well, let's do it more. Let's schedule a whole weekend. We did Friday, Saturday, Sunday, almost like a paranormal lockdown, like Nick Groff and Katrina do, and stayed there the whole weekend. We invited a couple other groups to come at various times just to see, is it us? Are we crazy? And every person that came in there, including ourselves, had just this amazing, incredible experiences in this place.
Right.
So we met with the owner, and we told him about all these experiences, and I was like, man, you have just a gold mine on your hand, and I, not for making money, but for paranormal activity. And I told him it would be a damn shame not to open this up to paranormal groups, to let them come in and experience and investigate, and let the public come in. And I know that's not a B&B, but this thing's just sitting here and you're not able to get it renovated, so why don't we try this and see what happens? And he agreed, and so since then it's kind of progressively blowing up more and more.
Wow. Okay. Well, the mansion itself was built in 1854. Am I correct? By Armstrong and Eliza Beattie. Now, Armstrong Beattie was the mayor of St. Joseph, I believe.
He was first. He was eventually. He first was the first banker in St. Joe.
Right.
And so his bank handled a lot of that westward expansion money that was coming through town, and he was quite wealthy.
Okay. Now, what was
and then?
Sorry, go on, Elijah.
Well, I was just going to, and then he went on to become mayor 5 different times. He was elected as mayor of town. Right.
Now, did him and Eliza ever have children?
They didn't. Eliza and Armstrong did not have any kids. They had no heirs. We're still kind of piecing together information. We can find a decent amount on Armstrong, and we cannot find a single thing about Eliza other than we found her gravestone in the cemetery down the street.
Well, interesting enough, I was looking stuff up, and I found that, no, she didn't have any children, but she did end up taking in her niece, Mary Ann, when her mother died. And that was Eliza's sister.
They seem to be more connected with her side of the family for some reason. They did take in a niece. At one point, they had a couple other family members, younger family members, living in that home with them. We found census forms from, mid to late 1800s that had lists of everybody in the house. And there were a couple other younger family members there as well. And I know that this niece...
Sorry, I was going to say, I think that I also found that Mary Ann's brother, when Eliza's sister, who was married, I believe, to a U.S. senator, or a chap who'd been a U.S. senator, when she died, the son ended up taking an apprenticeship up with Armstrong at the bank.
Yep.
So,
you were well-versed.
Thank you.
You've done your research. I'm impressed.
Google's amazing. It tell you what, if you know what to type in, it's amazing. And if you know what sort of leads to follow and things to look at, you can get some really amazing information, even from the other side of the pond. But no, I couldn't find any record of them ever having children. And there is a reason I asked this question, which you probably know, because I have seen quite a few of the videos that are up on YouTube of you guys investigating the mansion, and obviously on the Beattie Mansion website, which we're going to put the link up to on our Parasearch page, so anyone can go and have a look at it. And anyone in the US who wants to look at hiring it, once they hear us talking about it a bit more, can get in touch and look at hiring it. But then in 1880, after both, I think, Armstrong and Eliza had passed away, it became, well, I thought it was a home for the homeless, but you said it was a bit more than that.
It was. So it was purchased by a local nonprofit called the Ladies Union Benevolence Association, or LUBA for short. Mm-hmm. So LUBA purchased the property and turned it into a home. They called it the Home for the Friendless. And so they definitely took in homeless individuals. They took in orphans. They took in the mentally ill, addicts, anybody who was displaced or needed housing, they took them in. And one of the interesting things that we found out more recently is at that time there were approximately 80 brothels in St. Joe. There were a lot of people, a lot of money coming through town. So it makes sense that there were a lot of brothels to serve everyone. And when a prostitute would become pregnant, they'd get kicked out of the brothel and frequently would be taken in to the Beattie Mansion, or the Home for the Friendless then. And so there was quite a few residents there that were prostitutes and their children.
Blimey. But how big is St. Joe? How many people would have been living there at that point in time? At a guess.
I'm not sure. It was fairly decent sized.
Right.
Because of the money. And I'll tell you now, when you drive around town, you can see that it was a rich town.
Right.
There are just massive mansions everywhere that are, unfortunately fallen to pieces now and not in very good shape. But
One day,
you can definitely tell. Yeah, you can tell that at one point it was magnificent.
Right. So would this have been money from, because it was the end point of the Pony Express and all that kind of thing, or was it to do with the train lines, or do you know why it was such a rich?
I would say all the above.
Right. Okay.
So St. Joe was the hub to the west. So during what a lot of people think of, the cowboy era, the Wild West era, or settlers or gold rushes or anything like that, going westward, St. Joe is where everybody would stop and purchase all their supplies before heading any further out west.
Oh,
so,
right, okay.
There was just a ton of money coming in. There's a lot of old, and we've investigated and researched other locations in St. Joe, but there was a lot of money for, wholesale distributor type businesses, and there's a real famous saddle company that was in town back then that built and sold saddles.
Right.
So,
because the state you're next to there, is it Kansas that you're next to? Is it Kansas? Yeah.
Yep. It's Kansas, yeah.
Yeah, so you are really getting into what would be called the Wild West, and sort of, I suppose that would have been the reason for the prostitution as well, because you seem to associate good time girls and saloons with the Wild West, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of history with, cowboys, famous cowboys and outlaws and things like that are around this area.
Yeah. I mean, Jesse James being one of the really sort of famous ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Associated with St. Joe. But in 1995, I'm getting my dates all muddled up now. 1895, it stopped being this sort of home for the friendless, and it became a home for the aged, set up with by the same charity that you mentioned, LUBA.
Yep. So LUBA was taking in such a massive amount of people that they realized they really needed to kind of specialize their facilities, and so Beattie Mansion they used as a home for the aged, and they moved a children's home across town. They purchased another property across town and moved the kids over there. Mm. And so it served as a home for the aged for just about 100 years before they decided they needed more modern facilities and built and moved to a new building.
And then it became a home for the mentally ill and addicts and those kind of things, which to me draws a massive parallel with somewhere like Malvern Manor.
Yeah, it actually does. It's almost an exact parallel to the history of Malvern Manor. Mm. With the exception of it really wasn't a hotel before, and Malvern started out as a hotel. But other than that, I mean, it's almost exactly the same.
Mm. And it's strange that both places have got such an amazing sort of paranormal history, and they both served as homes for people with mental health problems and addictions.
Well, and I'll tell you, out of all the places we've investigated, Malvern and Beattie are probably the top two for most active. Yeah. Which is fascinating too.
Well, it must be to you guys as well, the fact that you've all got a background in mental health, that is your professions. You must be able to bring something to the conclusions that other people who haven't got that background may not be able to bring.
Think so.
Does that make sense?
It does. I think it serves us well in our investigations on a number of levels, but one thing that stands out is when we go to places like this that were mental health facilities, we know the history of mental health. We know the history of mental health treatment. We know the lingo and the names of medications and the techniques, and we have some of that insider expertise that I think really helps out quite a bit. Yeah. We did a pretty cool experiment up at Malvern Manor. So we went around we just kind of walked around the whole building and made an announcement. We're going to have group therapy down in the lobby. Everybody come down, and then we went in the lobby and we set up a circle of chairs like they would have for a group therapy session, and then we role played that it was group therapy, and I actually was a client, and then the other two guys were the therapists leading it, and we just acted out a group therapy session. And man, when we did that, it ramped up the activity. We had all kinds of EVPs that came out of that. We had equipment that was going off, and it was really pretty incredible to see.
That's a really interesting use of a trigger then, using your medical backgrounds to do something that would have been a trigger for them. Wow, okay.
It was. We actually, I'll give you another real quick story since you mentioned Mopin. There is it's called C Hall. It's probably their biggest building of jail cells, and you go in the basement and there's death row, and then you find kind of hidden, tucked away in a corner, another almost secret staircase that goes down to a sub-basement, and that's where they kept the mental health patients.
Right.
And so one of the times we investigated there, we were down on that mental health ward, and again, we started talking about medications and using some of the terminology of the medications they would have used while the prison was in operation, and it elicited activity. We started getting noises and voices and EVPs, and so I don't know. It seems to work for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds good. It sounds good. I mean, if it works, there's proof that triggers do work. So, yeah, use what you've got. Definitely. Sorry, are you still there, Elijah?
I am, yep.
Sorry. It just went quiet for a second. I thought you'd been kidnapped or abducted or something by aliens or something.
No, I'm sitting in a smart car and it tried shutting off on me. I guess I've been sitting too long for it.
Yes.
So I had to get it back running again. Sorry about that.
No problem. Well, as I was saying, I mean, triggers have definitely been proved. I've used triggers before in various sort of situations and have never failed me. And a trigger doesn't have to be a piece of music or an item. It can just be, as you say, using the lingo or certain things that would evoke a memory or whatever. All of those sort of things can work. It's amazing. So anyone who I'm gonna post some of the links to some of the YouTube videos as well on the Parasearch page this show's going out, so that people can see them and they can go back to your website and have a look at them and everything. But one of the ones I really enjoyed looking at was one that was on, I think it was only about a 9-minute one, and it was, to say it was EVP Central was an understatement.
Yeah.
It was like, I think there was a little girl asking for something on it. There was a spirit who'd apparently scared someone and admitted to doing it. It was, I can't tell people everything on there because I say that whole 9 minutes was literally full of EVP responses. It was amazing. Now,
yeah, and clear ones.
Very clear, very, very clear. I think I was trying to listen to them as my 2 kids were yelling and screaming and running around the living room, and I could still hear them. So,
yeah,
it was fascinating. Now, I know one of the spirits who's meant to sort of frequent the mansion is Eliza. Now, I presume that's Eliza as in Eliza and Armstrong Eliza.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and she's kind of nasty.
Really?
Yeah. So I hate to pass on stories we can't back up. So keep this in mind. I have no factual basis for it. But there was something weird. Armstrong's death was a little weird. So he fell unconscious on a Tuesday, was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
One Tuesday, fell unconscious, and he was dead by Thursday.
Yeah.
And doctor diagnosed it as cholera. We Googled it just to see, speaking of the Google machine, we Googled it, and the symptoms of cholera mimic the same as arsenic poisoning.
Yes.
So not saying that he was poisoned, but it's a little weird that he would die that suddenly and without any, warning or illness or anything before just falling unconscious.
Yeah.
In addition to that, it's really weird that we can't find information on Eliza. They were a prominent family, and other prominent families in town. We've been able to find gobs of information in historical records and Google, and anywhere we look, we find stuff. So to not find anything on Eliza feels odd to us.
Yeah.
We're just kind of sorting these little pieces of the puzzle out. Another little piece is when Armstrong died, in his will, the only thing that he left to Eliza was the home. So all of his other assets he left to other people. He left stuff to the niece, to the nephew, to friends. And the only thing he left for Eliza was the home, which seems extremely odd for a married couple.
Yeah, that does.
So we've got a lot of question marks about what this relationship was like. And it's weird not to have heirs. Not to say it didn't happen, but it was weird for that time period for folks not to have heirs. So we kind of get all these pieces, and we add on to this as we're investigating and other groups come in. We know Eliza's there. She's flat out told us there's that EVP of her singing her name. We know where she is in the home, which is on the second floor in this one particular hallway. She seems to kind of hang around and almost guard, and she really doesn't like men. She's not given us any indication why that is. We know that she doesn't like men, and she hates any time we bring up Armstrong or we bring up the fact that they have no heirs. She will get very angry. She'll get physical, and she'll completely ignore our questions and not answer.
And does that matter whether it's a man asking other questions or a woman, or?
That doesn't seem to matter. Whoever asks those questions, it just pisses her off. And it seems the physical part is more with men, but the ignoring the questions. I mean, we'll have 3-4 EVPs in a row from her answering questions, or we'll have her coming through on a spirit box, and it's the same female voice over and over answering because she engages with us. Mm-hmm. And then you mention anything about heirs or anything about Armstrong or anything about his death being weird we've tried to ask her about, and she immediately shuts down and won't talk the rest of the night. The one that you're that you're referencing about her saying she did it, that was Eliza.
Oh, that was Eliza, was it? What had she done?
Well, so here's what's fascinating is we have a psychic on our team, and the way that we use her is we'll have her go into a location and walk through and give us information, and then she leaves, and we try to see if through the investigation, anything that we catch or experience, excuse me, if it matches up with what she said.
Yeah.
She's kind of like our paranormal hound dog. She tells us where the hot spots are and who might be there and where to sniff things out, kind of.
I've just got Elvis singing in my head now.
There you go. That's great. There ain't nothing but a hound dog. Like that.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I told you this thing goes off on tangents, I tell you. Yes, she's your paranormal hound dog. She goes in and sniffs out the hot spots. Yeah.
Allie. Her name's Allie. So the first time she ever came to Beattie, she was spot on. She knew nothing about the place. Nobody knew about this place. We didn't even give her an address. We had her meet us down the road at a gas station, and then we drove her to the mansion. One of the things that she said during her walkthrough, she said, "Ooh, there's a real nasty, angry woman in this hallway," and we all kind of snickered to ourselves because we knew that, yeah, that's Eliza. That's where she hangs out and where she, responds and interacts with us. Mm-hmm. And she said, "Oh, she is really angry. Somebody's gonna get choked tonight." And I didn't think anything of it. I thought that was a weird thing for her to say, and I almost thought it was just bullshit. Can I cuss? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. It's had an adult content warning on this show. Don't worry.
Okay, good. All right, then I'm gonna let them fly. I was very skeptical, and I thought it was total bullshit when she said that.
Yeah.
So fast forward, and this is the night that 3GD was there with us too, and they were involved in this session. Ryan and Gino were involved in this session.
Right.
So we're standing up in Eliza's hallway, and we're getting responses from her. She's talking to us, and all of a sudden, I get this feeling. It was the weirdest feeling. The best way I can think to describe it is it felt like two fingers on the inside of my neck pinched my windpipe. So I jumped up, and I was hacking and coughing and trying to catch my breath, and I went outside and stood outside for a minute and came back, and Eliza was continuously talking to everybody, and I sat down, and I said, "You know what, Eliza, was that you that did that to me?" And clear as day, she says, "Yeah." Almost with an attitude, like condescending, like, "Yeah, it was me." And then I said something to the effect of, "You know what, you don't have to do that. If you want me to go, just tell me and I'll go." And she immediately says, "Leave." So as soon as I heard that, man, I don't think I've ever got up and ran so fast. I got my butt out of there.
Do you think she might just be protecting her home? That she's sick of all these people coming in and out of it, like, for the last 150 years? And as far as she's concerned, it's hers. So why are there all these other people there?
That's what we've wondered. She's never directly answered us when we've asked that of her. She's never told us why she's there.
Does she actually know she's dead?
I'm not sure if she does or not.
Right.
I'm not sure if she does or not. And that could be maybe part of why she shuts down when we mention the Armstrong stuff. But she sure as hell doesn't like guys, and she really doesn't like me for some reason.
Okay. So Eliza is... it almost sounds like she doesn't realise she's gone. She still thinks... And if she was quite sort of... Even if she was abusive, because that's what it sounds like to me, that she possibly could have been abusive, or he could have been abusive to her. Who knows? But you mentioned about the fact that there's hardly anything on her. When I was sort of cross-referencing and I found out that her sister had been married to this Missourian senator, when I look up his biography, there's absolutely no mention of a wife.
Mm-hmm.
Not one thing. Which I thought would be unusual for someone who's a senator.
That is unusual.
I couldn't find. I mean, the research I was doing, there might be stuff sort of on paper somewhere, but I couldn't find any evidence that he was married.
Wow.
So
yeah,
I'm wondering if it's
weird.
Something with the whole family name. But there does definitely seem to, as you say. I mean, yeah, I found quite a bit on Armstrong, but it was only when I started looking up him and Eliza, and I found sort of the details of where he's buried, and then it triggered details about her. But it's really vague, the information about her. Really vague.
Well,
for the 1800s, where documentation was normally quite good.
Yeah, and we've contacted the state, the city, the county, and nobody has any records at all on Eliza.
Mm. But we know she existed.
A couple other...
We know she existed.
We know she existed. We know that she died and she's buried next to Armstrong. Mm. Here's a couple other interesting pieces to the puzzle. Is when we first went out to the cemetery and we found Armstrong and Eliza, and there is I forget what you call them, a pillar, an obelisk, mm-hmm. with the name Beattie, and then right in front of it are 3 graves. There's Armstrong, there's Eliza, and there's a third grave, but that third grave is so worn thin you can't read it, and we have no clue whose that is.
They don't have any records at the cemetery as to whose it is.
We haven't asked the cemetery yet.
Oh,
excuse
right.
me. So they might. This is all new stuff and new leads that we're still working on tracking down. So we got to figure that out. But there's this mysterious third grave that we got to look into. Something else that we've wondered, and maybe it's because we're mental health professionals and we kind of lean that way anyways, is we kind of wonder if Eliza didn't have some sort of mental illness, and she was kind of kept hidden, for lack of a better term, because of that mental illness. And
possibly,
so that's something
but
we're looking at.
Would a sort of well-known banker and then mayor have married someone with a mental illness, or she could have developed it along the lines?
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a fairly well-known psychiatric hospital that is in town, mm-hmm. and so our researcher is going down that road to see if we can find any mention of Eliza ever having been in that facility, and that would kind of help bring some credence to the mental health theory. Yeah.
It could be that worn-out grave is a child that she lost, and that's what caused a breakdown.
And that's something else we wonder too. Yeah. So we got to try to track down whose grave that is. It is a smaller headstone too. Yeah.
Because as you say, it would have been there was no contraception back then. You were expected to have a child, at least one child, as a woman, because women didn't have careers and all of that. So it is unusual that there weren't even any. If you look, I don't know what the American census looks like compared to the UK one, but when I've looked at UK census, you can see there was a young child in, say, 1881, and then in 1991, when the next one's done, that young child isn't there anymore. And then if you trace that back, you can find a death certificate for them. So that can be the case, but but unless there was a mental health condition running through the whole family, possibly, a hereditary thing,
and that could explain the sister also.
Yeah. Well, you piqued my interest now. I'm going to. I want to look into more of it now. And I thought Jesse James was interesting.
Yeah. It's a great mystery.
Isn't it just? We see, that's what everyone jokes about. That's my thing, digging into these things, and sort of looking things up and emailing other places, and I quite enjoy doing that side of it. But it's sort of like Nancy Drew-esque, Sherlock Holmes, whichever you want to use, whichever detective you want to use.
If you find something, you got to let me know. Cause
I will.
Like you're pretty good at digging into stuff.
I will. That's a deal. If I find anything, I will let you know. I promise. I'll see if I can re-find this website that I found the details about her sister and the children, and I'll ping that across to you. But So, is Eliza the only spirit that seems to talk to you all there, or are there more?
Eliza seems to be, I would consider her the main spirit. We get the most consistent interactions from her. Now, there's also a room up on the second floor that there's definitely a child in there. Mm-hmm. And we've captured this child quite a bit. The owner's got quite a few stories of a child. He was just there the other day cleaning, and he slipped and fell. I don't know exactly how. He slipped and fell while he was cleaning and heard a little kid giggle from the doorway of that room. So there's a specific room that's associated with the child. We do believe that Armstrong is still there. Mm-hmm. He seems to be more residual.
Yes.
In that we just kind of hear him pacing around and whistling in the same hallway.
Right.
We get a ton of shadow figures that seem to be mostly around the kitchen.
Right. I did notice on that YouTube video that the kitchen did seem to be quite a hotspot for things happening.
Yeah, we hadn't even considered it. And one night that night we did a full weekend there. We just happened to go, well, let's go sit in the kitchen for a little while. And man, we were seeing, it looked like kid-sized shadow figures walking by the door. A man-sized one came in the room and walked down one of the walls inside the kitchen. Got a ton of responses from spirit boxes. Somebody got their hair pulled, their shirt pulled.
Wow.
I mean,
it wouldn't surprise me that there were people still there, because, you know, the fact that if you even ignore the Beattie ownership of it, you know, as a centre of people who were homeless and had nowhere to go, you look at the statistics from the late 1800s of death in childbirth or death just after childbirth. There's got to have been at least a few happened there, just statistically, because they won't have had access to like sort of top medical care or anything like that. Yeah. Then you look at when the older population was there, well, you know, there will have been deaths occurred then as well. And then, I mean, I presume even when the sort of 9 years it was a mental health and addiction facility, you're going to have some of those people are going to pass away while they're there. So there must have been an awful lot of deaths, mortalities occurred there, just statistically.
Our researchers still finding left and right, finding new things, and so we're constantly learning new stuff. And she's found quite a few death certificates. It seems to mainly be of, you know, elderly folks that died while it was a home for the aged. But she keeps finding stuff, and so we're hoping that as she continues to dig, you know, we'll figure out more and more. And as we have more and more groups come in, you know, we're starting to see the patterns a little clearer, and we're starting to see where specific spirits are in the building and where the activity is, and we're learning more and more. There's a room on the first floor that our group hasn't investigated yet, but we've had, probably a dozen groups say that was the most active room while they were there, and so we're hoping to, next time our group gets up there, we can spend a little time in that room and see what happens.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so it's kind of good with that many rooms and in that bigger building, having all these other groups go in. They can sort of like suss out other places for you, because it's going to take a long time to completely cover the whole building.
It really does, especially to do a decent job. When we spent that full weekend there, I mean, even then, that was only enough time to concentrate on, you know, a few spots in the building. And we really haven't gotten to specific rooms much outside of, you know, the big parlor room and the kitchen. We spent a lot of times in hallways and a ton of time in the basement. So let me tell you a little bit about the basement.
Go on.
I'm the one in our group that does the scary stuff. So when we went to Mopin, I went down in the dungeon by myself and put a blindfold on and put earbuds into a recorder and did kind of what we call a sensory deprivation session.
Yes, yeah.
And, you know, when we went to, have you heard of the Sally House?
Yes, I've heard of the Sally House, yeah.
Okay. When we went to the Sally House, I was the only one in our group that would go to the basement by himself. And so I'm kind of the guy you send into the scary places.
Okay. You don't do a Zach Bagans, though, do you, and run out screaming?
No, I have not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not fully true. There was one time, I'll be honest. There was one time at the Sally House. I was sat in the basement, and I put a chair on the pentagram, and I was sitting on this chair for 30 minutes. And after that 30 minutes was up, we decided to meet back upstairs in the dining room. And so I get on the stairs, and I start getting that creepy feeling like somebody's trying to get you.
Yeah.
And as I'm walking up, and the stairs aren't even that big, but as I'm walking up the stairs, the feeling just intensifies and intensifies, and then I hear something step onto the stairs behind me, and literally chased me. I chased me out of the basement, so I did run, I'll be honest. I ran up, the last few stairs, through the kitchen into the dining room, and we heard it on camera. You can hear the footsteps behind me. I had a camera running in my hand.
Oh, cool. Cool.
So that
but did you scream? Did you scream, or did you just run?
I didn't scream. I ran.
That's all right then.
I got the hell out of there, but I didn't scream.
It's all right then. That's all right then. So, in the basement at Beattie, or the House on the Hill, as it's also known, what happened?
The basement scares the hell out of me.
Okay.
Even going down there during the daytime, it is ridiculously creepy down there. There's a particular hallway in a particular room. I don't think that it's something evil, but I think there's a really angry man that resides in this room down there.
Okay.
And he doesn't like people in his space. So I'll tell you a couple of stories. There's one EVP we caught. This is the very first time we ever went there, and we left a recorder down on the far side of the basement, and we actually left the building for a little while, and we caught the creepiest laugh. It's almost like something out of a horror movie. It sounds like whoa, whoa, ah, 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 ah. It really is. You can get on those YouTube videos.
I will.
The oldest one, the first one.
Okay.
I think it's called House on the Hill, and it's on there, and it is scary. We had Johnny Hauser, who's
we know Johnny. Yeah, we know Johnny. Yeah.
Okay, so Johnny Hauser happened to be in town. He was passing through. Him and his family were on vacation or something, and Johnny was passing through, and I was at Beattie Mansion, so gave him a call, and I said, "Hey, man, we're up here. Why don't you come check this out while you're in town?" So him and his wife and his daughter came by and gave him a tour, and we were down in the basement, and they actually got growled at in the hallway outside the room that we caught that laugh.
Okay.
And that incidentally led to, I'm going to name drop a little bit.
Go on.
Not trying to be a snob, but it helps the story.
Go on. Hello. Okay, so there was a little bit of a technical problem there. Obviously, when we're talking about Skype calls and internets across a very big sea, occasionally we have a few problems, but Elijah's back now. We were talking about, he was going to name drop about the bay.
I was going to name drop.
Go on, name drop away.
Okay, so Johnny Hauser is good friends with Nick Groff, and he contacted Nick, and Nick and Katrina ended up coming out to Beattie Mansion, and they filmed an episode of Paranormal Lockdown there.
You do realise that wherever Nick lay, there's going to be a lot of women, and maybe some men, who are now drooling, and conversely, there's going to be a lot of men and maybe some women, the thought of Katrina sleeping somewhere. So, you do realise you're perpetuating people's fantasies right now.
Yes, absolutely. So they came, and at the end of their filming, I think that episode already aired in the UK for you guys.
Yeah, I think we're on the most current series now. We're just waiting for the brand new series to start here.
Yeah. So at the end of the filming, Nick said, I've been doing this for years and years and years. I don't get scared at all anymore. He said, but your basement scares the hell out of me.
Oh, I need to go there, Elijah. I don't get scared by anything. I want to be scared by something.
You might regret saying that.
No, I've issued this as an open challenge. In fact, one of the quite well-known British investigators, a guy by the name of Lee Roberts, he's issued it as an open challenge. He said if anyone can get me on an event, and not by like jumping out from behind a wall or something like preconceived, but actually capture me scared by a paranormal occurrence, they get a year's free investigations with his group. Because it's been done as a challenge over here. Nobody's taken him up on it yet though. So
I'll take him up on it. You tell him, you send him my way, and you tell him to come to Beattie Mansion.
Well, no, he gets scared all the time. He admits it. It's me because he wants me to get scared.
You, yeah. Well, you come then. We'll send you down the basement by yourself.
You're on. I actually do want to get scared. I want to be scared. I do.
Well, Beattie, I think, is the only place that I'm the only person in our group that's gone and spent time down in the basement by himself at Beattie.
Okay.
And it was terrifying. I went down and I sat outside that grumpy, angry man's room, and I saw the shadow figure, and he kind of take a couple steps out of the room, and then he'd dart back, and he kept coming closer, and this was over the course of about 30 minutes, and finally, 20, 30 minutes in, this shadow figure came rushing out of the room straight at me to the point where I jumped up off the stool and stumbled and took a few steps to regain my composure, but it was the most terrifying, and it wasn't just the shadow figure rushing at me, it was the feelings that came with it. That was the worst part.
Yeah.
It was a terrified, scared for my life type of feeling.
Oh, I want to come over to Missouri now. I can't this year, but I want to come over to Missouri now.
You do it. You tell me when you come, and I'll take you up there.
It's a deal. Well, I'm sure we could actually talk for another hour about this place, because it does sound like we're only touching the tip of the iceberg here as to what's happened there. But if anyone does want to sort of read up on some of the other experiences, look at some of the videos, you can go on to the Beattie Mansion website. You can also contact the guys at Apex. I'm sure they'll be happy to chat through things. If you want to look at booking it, if you're over in the States and it's something you're interested in looking into, because I'm kind of the opinion places don't necessarily have to be famous to be active. People think over here, especially in the UK, they think of castles, they think of jails, but you can have almost like the most innocuous of house, and it's just energy central. So it definitely does, and it is a beautiful looking building. Actually, it's very American looking, I think, which is it's obvious because it's in America, but I can almost imagine it with the sort of the bunting that you see outside those kind of houses, that semicircular bunting sort of all around the balustrade bits, if that makes sense. So yeah, do contact the Apex guys. I know they'd be happy to chat. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Good.
I love talking about Beattie, so anytime.
Well, we've had quite a few interesting conversations while we were sort of doing the leading up to this show, but I know you've got to get back to work, because I know it's your lunch break that we're recording this. But if you could pick 3 places in the world to investigate, what would they be?
Oh, places I haven't been before?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to get to Lep Castle in Ireland.
Oh, yes.
That is a big one on my bucket list.
Yeah.
The wife and I did a tour this past weekend at Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
I know. I saw the photos you posted. Oh, very jealous.
Oh, that place is just... The tour was a little odd for me because it was so structured and they were strict and stand here and don't go there. And so that was a little weird. But to have the place to yourself, I can only imagine how amazing that must be. And so that is definitely on my list. And then my third, I would probably say, is the Ohio State Reformatory, which is another fairly well-known prison over here.
Yeah.
it's where they filmed the Shawshank Redemption movie.
Yep, I know the one. Yep.
So I would love to get into that sometime.
Okay. Well, Lepp is definitely on my list. I know most people have Waverley on their list. One of mine is Mopen. It's actually on my list, but I think I just need to come to Missouri for about a month and visit loads of places. But then again, I'd also love to do Villisca. So I'd be calling Mr. Hauser for that one. So, Well,
you come over here, and between Apex and 3GD, we'll get you to all these places.
And I don't know if you're as bad as the girls of 3GD, but probably there might be a few raucous nights along the way.
There will probably be nights that we won't remember so well.
Yeah. That's the whole reason. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Elijah. I really do appreciate it. Obviously, we did have a few little technical glitches, but it's all worked. And if anyone wants to get in contact with Apex, please do so. They really are really lovely, helpful guys. Check out their YouTube stuff, check out their Facebook page, and go and have a look at the Beattie website, because it really is interesting. But I'm going to go off now and do some more Googling to see what else I can find out about Eliza, and sort of see if I can find anything else out about Eliza. But you've got an investigation there this weekend, I believe.
We have a public ghost hunt coming in, a public event on Friday night. And then Saturday night, I think Ed and I from Apex are going to stay up there and do our own, just the two of us, on Saturday. And we'll probably do quite a few Facebook Live videos from both the Apex Facebook page and the Beattie Facebook page. So
Okay. Are you going to go in the basement, though?
I will go in the basement, yeah. I'll go down by myself and do a live video.
Yeah. Make sure you dedicate it to me.
Absolutely.
So I know that it's real. Say, Penny, I'm here. Then I'll know it's real.
I'll label it Penny's Basement Video.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope everyone listening has enjoyed the show. I know I've enjoyed chatting to Elijah. And hopefully, maybe we can get you back on again sometime to talk about somewhere like the Sally House.
Absolutely. I'd love to. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Well, all that leaves me to say is to everyone is thank you so much for listening to Haunted Histories on Parasearch Radio. My name's been Penny G. Morgan, as you know, and you also know that we've got shows on 6 days of the week, all available on our YouTube channel to listen to after the event. And all that leaves me to say is, until next week, have a good evening, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.